Now let's talk about shipments. Usually you have two kinds. You have a parcel shipment and a freight shipment. Parcel is what usually referred to UPS or FedEx Ground, just your little package or an Amazon delivery. And those packages are usually, I'd say the cutoff between parcel and freight is 75 to 80 pounds. I think the hard cutoff is 150 pounds, but for safety reasons, the lower it is, the better, because you don't want the driver to have to carry a box that's 110, 120 pounds from their truck to your front door. You don't want them to drop it. You don't want something to happen. And our warehouse guy always had the cutoff about 75 or 80 pounds, or he would ship it via truck, depending on what it was. Because you can have, for the parcel shipments, they're in the small box and they run on conveyors. Like, UPS or FedEx, they have the conveyors and because they have massive boxes to ship, right? And if you had a heavy box, like say it's 100 pounds, that box, it's possible it could damage a conveyor or damage other boxes or fall off or something because of the weight. So if a lighter box is fared better, right? And then you have freight deliveries where you would put, let's say you had 40 boxes that you wanted to ship out. You would put them on a pallet, shrink wrap it, and that way it would be on a wooden pallet, secure in a truck. Granted, damage could happen at the terminals, but in general, it's less likely for there to be damage if you ship it on a truck versus if you ship it parcel. And with that many boxes, it's cheaper to ship on a truck versus shipping out 40 individual boxes. Now, a long time ago, they used to ask you for a signature. Like if they showed up at your door, they say, "Can you please sign?" I'd sign, my name. And then on their website, it would record that it delivered at, 1:30 p.m., signed for by so-and-so. And then a few years ago, they kind of stopped doing that. And what would happen is the driver that always came to our building would show up and he was leaving. And I go, "Hold on." I go, "Do you need my signature?" He goes, "No." He goes, "It's fine." And I always thought that would be kind of a problem because what if you ordered something that was, say, 10 boxes and 7 show up? If you don't sign for it, you don't really know how many boxes you should have got. And you don't know that you're missing 3 boxes until later on. Now, usually if only a partial shipment shows up, it's usually because they got separated and they usually deliver a couple days later. And what's really good, especially with FedEx and UPS, they have individual tracking numbers for everything. So if you had 10 boxes, you could look at the master tracking number and you click it, and then you could see all the other tracking numbers that go with that one shipment. It's really great to keep an eye on your order. And so we ended up having to, when we wanted to ship something, we had to make sure it delivered, especially if it was high value. We would always tell the customer, "Please consider having a signature delivery." That means customers paying money, so the driver has to deliver to their location and get a signature. So if the driver, they can't just drop off the box outside the front door and take off. They have to get a signature for that delivery. It's a little bit of an insurance policy, especially if it's high value. It's something small. 99% of the time, it was totally fine. I did have one order. It was a $1,500 order. It was a small box, but the part was $1,500. I begged the guy, "Please do a signature. Please, please." He refused. I go, "Sir, the charge at the time was like $25. I don't know what it is today, but I mean, versus how much the box was worth." He refused. Well, the driver delivered it to the wrong house because it had the same street name, but it was at the other end of town, or it was somewhere in Oregon, and they had the same street, but one was north, one was south, and it was like 20 miles apart. In the end, I got it worked out, but the time I spent hunting that down was just crazy. And that's why I've always insisted that people get it. And, it's up to the customer, but I always try to stress, the benefits to getting that, because it's much more secure for your delivery. So let's talk about freight shipments. There's quite a bit of distinction between freight and parcel. And usually you'll have something on a pallet. Let's say you have 40 boxes. You put them on a pallet, you shrink wrap it, and it sits on the pallet in the truck. And that's how the vendor will ship it out. It's cheaper for them that way. And a long time ago, back in my early days, one of our vendors ordered shrink wrap with their logo embedded in the shrink wrap. And so they'd have the order, they'd wrap up the pallet, send it to the customer. It was East Coast. So let's say it goes to LA. The LA customer would call up and say, hey, I'm missing some boxes. I got a couple damaged. And the vendor would say, send me some pictures. And so they'd send them the pictures and it was clear shrink wrap. So the vendor knew somewhere along the way that the carrier had probably an accident, something happened, but they rewrapped the pallet and tried to deliver it as is. And the vendor's like, no. And they duked it out with the carrier to get it fixed. Now they did take care of the customer. They sent him what they needed. They were fine. And then they dealt with the carrier, but they kind of got away from that. I didn't see that too much later on, but there's risk either way, parcel or truck. But truck, especially if you're ordering something heavy, big equipment, it's much safer, of course, on the truck. And what'll happen here, I'll show you. You call it LTL, which is less than truckload, is what that means. And what that is because when you order something, let's say you just order the 40 boxes and it's on one pallet. The carrier isn't going to just put your pallet on a truck and take it to LA. Because let's say they're in New York, right? They're going to fill up their truck with as many pallets as they can to fill up that truck. So it's cheaper for them. And then they're going to, the driver goes along the routes, picks up all his orders. He takes it to the main terminal, the closest one, right? And they're going to take those items, put it onto another truck that's, bound for LA. Because some of those items might be going to Michigan or Dallas or somewhere. But your order is going to LA. So they're going to put it on a truck and fill up that truck as much as possible. But you have the one pallet. So you're paying less than truckload. If you were ordering enough items to fill up the truck, it'd be more expensive. Though it's cheaper to ship it all at once, right? And then, so you have less than truckload, and you also have something called full truckload, which I just described, where your items take up all the space on the truck. Made a mistake there. It's not, unless you're ordering like a conveyor or something, huge, you're not always going to fill up the whole truck. Okay. Now, another type of delivery is what they call a dedicated delivery, and I'll explain. So let's say this is the United States right here. Okay, that's the United States. Forgive my artistry. So you have New York and you're shipping to LA. So you're shipping it one way, right? Typically, you're less than truckload. Here's the vendor. He's going to go to, let's say, Pittsburgh, and then he's going to go to Detroit. He might go to Denver and then go to LA. Okay, so he's hitting 2 or 3 hubs along the way because at each hub, the carrier is trying to fit as many boxes and many pallets to get to the next place because it's cheaper for them. A dedicated delivery means that, let's say, here's the shipment and it's going straight to LA. It's not going to stop. I mean, the driver stops, but he's not going to stop at any hub. He's just going straight through. It's more expensive to ship that way, but you have a lot less damage. And usually items that, I'll use an example of smoker, which is, some of them are pretty huge. They go on a flatbed truck, which there are no sides or top. It's just a flatbed and it's strapped down, and they take that from, let's say, New York all the way to LA. And on those deliveries, you absolutely have to have a call for appointment to know when the driver is going to show up. Sometimes the driver, not always, but sometimes they can call the customer just to give them a heads up when they show up, because a big item like that's going to need a forklift on site to offload that thing, especially as heavy. And I'll tell you a quick thing on a forklift. Let's say this is your forklift. The guy's sitting here and you have the forks, right? If your item is super heavy, and I had this happen, it was an oven. It's like $40,000. And what happened was the truck, or the forklift, slid into the truck, picked the oven up, took it out, and then within 2 seconds, it flipped over on its side. Done. 40 grand. Just destroyed. And it miraculously got worked out. They fixed it. I mean, they got a new one and everything. But it's because the oven was like this, and there was nothing supporting the oven here because The forks just were here. So you need to, if you're having to deal with this and your customer has to get a forklift, always say extended forks, because you just want to be on the safe side. Usually forklifts are rated for a certain weight, rated for like 1,200 pounds, 15, whatever it is. And it depends. I mean, when you call and make these arrangements, you want to confirm, or maybe you'll have your customer confirm. You just don't want to go through all this trouble, order them their item, for them not to have everything they need to receive it. You don't want to kind of hang them out to dry. A lot of customers don't know how to receive big equipment or expensive items. They don't know the ins and outs. And so on something like this, you want to be able to provide them with as much information as possible. And if they have to rent a forklift, just make sure they know how much their unit weighs, they know all the dimensions, and they make sure they get with the rental company. Do I have the right forklift for this? Here's the spec sheet of the item I'm getting. Is that forklift the right one? So everything's, you just want to be able to check everything. So anyway, you have less than truckload, which is the most common, full truckload, which is you take up the whole truck. And then you have a dedicated, it's called a dedicated delivery, meaning it goes all the way to the location without stopping. Now, once it gets there, you have other considerations. When something arrives and you have to sign for it, you want to make sure the boxes, or the boxes plural, or the pallet, whatever it is you're receiving, is not damaged, which means you have to take a look at it. An experienced receiver, an experienced person in a warehouse is going to know to do that. So the truck backs up, drops off the pallet. You need to walk around the pallet, make sure nothing's damaged. Sometimes there could be damage and you don't see it until later. It's called concealed damage. That's a different issue altogether. I'll talk about that in the future. But just for now, you want to look around. Now, I've seen pictures of a box and the forklift totally jammed into it and they still signed for it. And I'm like, no, you don't want to sign for something that's damaged, because you could sign for it and still write damaged on the delivery slip. But if you're signing for it, you're accepting responsibility for it, whether it's damaged or not. And you're going to have to be the one to file the freight claim. And you don't want to have to do that. Typically, if a shipper is shipping all day, every day, they have a really good relationship with their carrier. And the carrier doesn't want to lose that account because they're shipping all day, every day, right? Maybe they even have their own rep. They might even have their own designated person, depends how much they ship. So if someone ships something to you and it's damaged, you do not want to sign for it. You say, sorry, I can't take it. I've had cases where the driver is like, oh, no, you have to. No, you don't. He doesn't want to go back to the delivering terminal with a full truck. He doesn't want to go back to the terminal with anything in his truck. Some drivers are cool. Some drivers might give you a little bit of a story. You just have to say, no, I'm sorry, it's damaged. I'm not touching it. It's not mine. Because sometimes the drivers don't know it's been damaged. They don't see maybe all the items that go in there. Who knows? I didn't work inside a terminal, but I worked at places with the warehouse. And you just have to say, no, I can't take it. And then what you need to do, if you remember, to take pictures of the damage, and you contact either your buyer or you contact the vendor or the rep, whoever it is, and you say, here are the pictures. This just arrived damaged. Please let them know. And a lot of times on boxes that are large like that, on the outside, they'll have a label with the serial number. Now, the serial number outside the box isn't always 100% the serial number in the box. I've had that happen. Most of the time it is. Sometimes it's not, but you should still take a picture of it. And you want to take a picture of the damage, because the vendor is going to have to know to issue a replacement to ship out to you. If you sign for that, damaged, depending on the relationship with the vendor, they could still work it out and get a replacement to you, but that has to be sent back. And this is very important. Hugely important. Please remember this. Please remember this. If you get an order and it's damaged, but your warehouse guy receives it and signs for it anyway, signs for damage, but you receive it, please, please, please do not throw away the packaging. Do not throw away the packaging, because the carrier, if your vendor's the one who files the claim, some vendors won't file the claim for you. They'll tell you to do it. Some will, just depends. But let's say the vendor files the claim for you. They're still going to ask you for pictures. keep the packaging, because sometimes it depends how bad the damage is, how much money is involved. Sometimes the carrier will send out an agent to the warehouse to examine the damage. And if the packaging is thrown away, that works against you, because the, if the package is totally fine, they're going to say, hey, wait a minute, how come you said this is damaged? Maybe it got damaged when it arrived here. Like, they don't know, right? So you don't want to give the carrier any reason to deny the claim or maybe not pay out the full amount, whatever. And so I always told my customers, please, especially if I knew something was important or if I knew the order was very expensive, I said, please, if anything happens and you end up signing for it, don't throw away the packaging. You want to keep it. And also because if something arrives damaged and you sign for it, but you can't use it, of course, it's going to have to be picked up and sent back. Sometimes the vendor will come get it. Sometimes you have to send it back, but you need the packaging to do that. And if it's damaged, you'll have to maybe fix that part of the packaging. But a lot of times customers don't have the right box for something, or they don't have, like, we used to get microwave ovens and they'd have the styrofoam inside the box that conformed to the outside of the oven. So it was more of a cushion so it wouldn't get damaged. Stuff like that. You want to hold on to it. And so if you just remember that, it's very helpful. And when you do get something, if it is damaged, please just call right away. You want to tell the carrier right away. I've had people call 6 months later, a year. I had a guy call a year later. He goes, oh, it's damaged. And I said, that box has been in your warehouse for a year. How do I know it didn't get damaged during that year? And he goes, oh, no one touched it. Well, I might believe him, but carriers ain't going to believe him. Usually trucking companies give you a time limit to file that claim. Maybe it's 15 days, maybe it's 2 months. It just depends. So that's why you have to report it right away. And if it's late in the day, get all your pictures, get everything, report it the next morning. And then that way you can kind of get the ball rolling on a replacement. Now let's talk about specialized delivery. There are different versions and it varies with the trucking company, but you might have something called inside delivery. That means that, well, let me explain first. When a truck shows up and you have something on a pallet, the driver will bring the pallet to the edge of the truck and that's it. And if there's no lift gate, you have to have your forklift, your Big Joe, whatever, come, and you have to be able to take that pallet off the truck yourself. That's why it's very important if you don't have a dock to have a lift gate. So let's say you do have a lift gate on the truck. So the driver brings the pallet to the edge of the truck, puts it on the lift gate, drops it to the ground, and then you wheel it off, right? Some people want the driver to wheel it inside the building, not like up the stairs or in the back, just crossing the threshold. Because typically drivers are not insured to do anything with the order after they drop it to the ground. Typically, I mean, it varies, but usually that was the case. And so you could pay for that. Or you could have something called white glove service. Now, white glove service could mean many things to many people. You would want to get a quote from the carrier to describe the scope of what you want. Maybe you'll have the driver, it's usually at least two guys, take the unit, they have it on the lift gate, they drop it to the ground, they wheel it into your building to maybe where it's going to be installed, or maybe within 5 feet, depends. And they're going to unbox it for you. They might even, if it's part of their scope, they might put the casters on for you, might put the legs on for you. Very, very, very light assembly, if any. Usually you'd rather have your installer do that. But they'll bring it in, unpack it, and they'll take the debris out. They're not going to take an old unit out. You would have to do that. Unless you made arrangements, which that would be kind of expensive. Usually installer will work with you on that. For white glove service, it is more expensive, but you can ask for it because not all carriers will offer that. But you could ask, and if it is, get a quote and see if that's what you want to do. And if it is, if you do want white glove service or inside delivery, it must be on the purchase order, because when the vendor ships out your order, they're going to fill out the bill of lading, the piece of paper that tells the carrier, here, this order goes to this address. Here are the special instructions. You have a lift gate. You have a call for appointment on there. And they would have to have inside delivery and have the contact name and number, or white glove service, something to note that. And hopefully you would put whatever the quote number is for the white glove service, as much information as possible on the purchase order. And this also helps accounting, because down the line, when they get that invoice, if there's any issue, they can pull a copy of the original PO and they can see all the information on there. I've had vendors where the PO is perfect. Everything's on there, good to go. The vendor acknowledged the order correctly. Everything's on there. We're good to go. Yay. It ships, only to find out there is no liftgate service on the bill of lading. It gets to the customer, and the customer says, "We can't accept it. There's no liftgate." What do you mean? There was a liftgate on the PO. The vendor forgot to put a liftgate on the bill of lading. Bill of lading's like the instructions for the carrier. They forgot. It happens. It's an accident. It's just, it just goes to show you that you have to, it's just better to call and check, better to make sure, especially if you have something that's very important to deliver, you're trying to meet a date, or is it something that's very valuable? It's just better to check.